Thanks, Peter, and hi, everybody. Thanks for the invitation, and to the other speakers. It's great to be able to connect internationally. I'm Clara Paillard. I'm a former green reps at the Liverpool Museums. I was also on the PCS National Executive Committee for 4 years and a member of the Environmental and Climate Change Committee. So I've been a climate justice activist over 15 years and was heavily involved in the anti-fracking movement in the UK and other campaigns. But this is what I want to share with you today in terms of my experience of resistance to alternative by talking about the anti-fracking movement in the UK that ultimately led to a moratorium on fracking in 2019. Although you may have heard that the new UK Prime Minister in her first speech has announced she plans to lift this moratorium to restart fracking in the UK. So I guess we are back to square one and need to revive the movement, which we will do. Anyway, back in 2011, some of the local people in the Blackpool area in the northwest of England started to mobilize against the fracking licenses that were being applied for different sites, but including Preston New Road, that will become famous later on. Quite rapidly, some of us climate activists started to organize to support their protests. I was concentrating on getting trade unionists involved into the campaign, as one of the big arguments that was being used to justify fracking was the creation of jobs in this area where unemployment was a problem. So local people could be receptive to that. My union PCS was one of the founder unions of the 1 Million Climate Jobs campaign. And ever since I became a green rep, this was a campaign I was working on, supporting, trying to spread across workers and trade unions. Too many workers and unions were skeptical about climate campaigns because it seems to be destroying jobs. So not only we managed to start mobilizing trade unions as early as 2011, we had a Northwest TUC, Trade Union Conference, which featured anti-fracking at a time where most unions didn't have a clue what fracking was. The next year, at the 2012 Unite the Union Conference, we mobilized rank-and-file trade unionists to win an anti-fracking conference motion against the National Executive Committee and the energy sector. The motion included support for the 1 Million Climate Job campaign. Climate jobs feature heavily in any of our slogans and messages. By 2013, the then Prime Minister, David Cameron, made claims that the shale gas industry could create 74,000 jobs. So our campaign had to take that on, and we set not to only dismantle those claims. In reality, even the Energy Department was only talking about 24,000 jobs. But those jobs would often not last long, not longer than 5 years because of the life of a gas rig. So by this time, fracking was on all the lips after a big battle at a site called Balcombe, where campaigners in the south of England quickly defeated the planning application. So the battle moved in the desolate north that was highlighted by the government as an acceptable area for developing fracking, and where most of the licenses were being applied for. So our slogans were no to fracking jobs, yes to climate jobs, and they were adopted by the anti-fracking movements. The big 2013 Camp Frack happened under that name, and we had regular protests under that title, not just in Blackpool, but in Marebrow, between Preston and Southport, in Barton Moss near Manchester, in Marsh Lane in Derbyshire, and other sites. And those protests would bring together workers, trade unions, climate activists, and local residents. So we could show that this campaign was not just about saying what we were against, but what we were for. So the climate jobs provided the answer. And for an area like Blackpool and the Fyle, jobs in renewable wind power particularly made sense, given the proximity of the coast, the availability of a disused port at Fleetwood that could be a base for wind turbine production and transportation. So my union PCS worked with local campaigners to produce a local climate job alternative, looking how many jobs we could produce in renewable energy, in housing, insulation, local transport, and other sectors. And I believe the climate job argument played a big role in galvanizing more supporters, especially across trade unions. And that led to the moratorium victory in 2019, in parallel to amazing resistance of the local people and climate campaigners. Since then, we see over and again campaigns that are just opposed to projects without setting an alternative. And that is where intervention on climate jobs are key. For example, you see the Just Stop Oil is not really setting any alternative, and neither is Extinction Rebellion, and that's a weakness. So more recently, I've been involved in other campaigns who use the jobs dimension as part of their resistance. So a number of anti-airport expansion campaigns have used the idea of climate job to integrate in their campaigning. So that was, for example, integrated into the Green New Deal for Gatwick or the Green New Deal for Leeds city region by the very campaign who opposed the airport plans. So in Leeds, for example, there were claims that the expansion of the airport would support over 12,500 jobs. The actual project itself only factored for 1,500 jobs by 2030. So the Green New Deal plan was supported by Leeds Trade Union Council and the Campaign Against Climate Change trade union groups, and plans for over 30,000 climate jobs over a 10-year transition, with half of those jobs being long-term, was developed. So a large majority of those jobs were in housing and retrofitting, where it was a big campaign, and that's developing into a more concrete campaign supported by the city council, but also in transport and recycling. There is another campaign I've been involved with, which opposed the new West Cumbria coal mine in the northwest of England, where the mining company claims that 500 jobs would be created in an area where unemployment is rife. So campaigners have also aimed to dismantle those jobs claims, but to also build this alternative. So they've done work with local campaigners, and the Cumbria Action for Sustainability produced a report showing that the county could benefit from 9,000 new jobs in industries ranging from renewable energy and construction to transport. There was a Green Job Summit organized involving trade unions, anti-mine activists, and climate organizations. And we expect a decision on the future of this mine in the next couple of months. The battle will continue. So note that in those examples, the potential jobs are not necessarily what we would define as climate jobs, and they do not link with a national climate service. They're not even necessarily public jobs or public funded jobs. They can be like in the private sector, but nevertheless, it's good to see this initiative propping up. But other important campaigns across the world do not have yet a jobs dimension. So for example, I'm involved more recently in the Stop EACOP campaign, which is a campaign against the East Africa crude oil pipeline, which will cross Tanzania and Uganda. And so far, no union connection exists, and the job argument hasn't been taken on. So we'll be working on that with the African comrades. Anyway, it is positive that alternatives have been posed by campaigners, but climate jobs cannot just remain an idea. The real question is how we implement them and put them at the heart of trade union bargaining agendas. We need to reach out to workers directly and not just rely on passing motions at union conferences and talking about it in Zoom meetings. So I'm now involved in a couple of initiatives at grassroots level that aim to actually move to the next level. So one we've just launched last week actually, is a new grassroots climate caucus in Unite the Union, which is one of the big unions in the UK and represent many industrial workers. So we want to counterbalance the centralized, untransparent Unite Environmental Task Force, which is mainly made of full-time officers and doesn't relate to rank and file trade unionists. So we aim to push the idea of climate jobs, radical climate justice policy within Unite, and to reach out to workers across the sector. And the other initiative is called Extinction Rebellion Trade Unionists. We are rank and file union members and reps who are organizing to support picket lines of workers in struggle and have conversation with those workers about climate justice and just transition. So for example, we had a presence at the Fowley refinery strike a few months back, at RMT and the Communication Workers Union picket over the summer. And on Friday, we've organized a big climate activist support the pickets for the Liverpool dockers who start their strikes tomorrow. So the aim is to build those relationships, start those conversations directly about jobs, air pollution, free ports, but also the link with local road building project and transportation of wood pellets for the biomass industry. So still much work to do, I'm afraid. And it's time to get out of the conference rooms and onto the picket lines to push the alternative to fracking, to new oil and gas rigs, and the false solutions such as biomass or carbon capture and storage. So climate jobs are key for success. Good, secure job with decent pay and skill. It is crucial at a time of cost of living crisis. So we can't let the myth of new oil and gas being the solution to the rise of energy prices or for the future of energy in countries in the global south. So the battle continues, and let's make the climate jobs a reality. Thank you.